Okay, so first of all, I am, of course, delighted to be here and so impressed to be among such a wonderful group of other inductees today, including at least one of whom I knew who didn't make it. But it is an astonishing, wonderful group of people that I'm allowed to associate with here today. And when I first heard about this, I related my fears that admitting me into this will make this a lesser wall of, but they admitted me in anyway. It was on this very stage, actually, that I did my first acting job. I was cast from the Drama Society here as a featured actor in a one-act play called The Bishop's Candlestick, which came from Victor Hugo's book of Les Miserables, the book. And it was an incident that occurred when Jean Valjean was out of 19 years of servitude for stealing a loaf of bread and was taken in by a bishop, a kind bishop, off the street, given dinner and a place to stay for the night. I played the Archbishop. Now, in the play, he has stolen one of the bishop's golden candlesticks in the middle of the night and fled into the night, where the police apprehend him, bring him back to the bishop, who looks upon him and immediately says, "Oh, I'm glad you came back. You forgot the other candlestick." An act of wonderful. Now, I'm a Jewish kid from Brooklyn playing an archbishop. I took that very seriously, especially since I knew nothing about being a Catholic. But I knew they spoke quietly and with great dignity. So when I came on stage in this very chamber, I spoke very distinctly and very quietly. So quietly, with such dignity, that a voice in the back of the room yelled, "We can't hear a thing you're saying!" I was undone, not as an actor, but as a Catholic archbishop. How could you talk to me like that? Anyway, I managed to get through that one. When I came back here about 3 years ago for the first time since my graduation in 1942, I wanted to see the entrance. I had my camera. I wanted to see the entrance to the swimming pool because I remembered, and many of you who are older than I am or as old as I am may remember this because I don't know when it changed. The title on the door was natatorium. Not swimming pool, folks. Natatorium. The only Latin I learned in this school was that word. Natatorium means swimming, but auditorium is. So there we are. But when I got there, I found out it was now swimming pool. So that took care of one of my fondest memories of Madison right there. But it was such an interesting school. And in my high school years, which started in 1938 and ended in 1942, what was going on in the world was so bloody dramatic, so compelling, and so inevitably leading toward war, that it sort of was the framework in which I viewed everything else, including what I was studying. The good news was there was one teacher in this school named A.S. Cohn. Anybody as old as I am who ever had her as a teacher? A.S. Cohn was about, as the lyric says, about as wide from side to side as she was tall from toe to head. And was very much, if not a communist, very close to one. She referred to Stalin as Uncle Joe. But she was a wonderful teacher and shared with me my conviction that what we were learning in school was not half as important as what was going on in the world. So she would spend a lot of each of our history class sessions just relating to what was going on in the world, which I loved. And then she also gave you a check mark if you stood up and spoke in class. Boy, did that go into my well house. I had never been encouraged in school anywhere to do that. I usually was shushed up. She said, you know, every time you did, you got a check mark, and that added up to 40% of your mark, which is why I got 90s finally in history. And one day there was a Wendell Willkie Roosevelt third term election going on at that time. And my dad, who had been a Democratic voter for the first two terms of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, thought maybe a third term was not appropriate and turned to Wendell Willkie, a thoroughly respectable Republican industrialist who was running against him. And so I went to Wendell Willkie too, because that was Dad. And so I was trying to campaign for Wendell Willkie, to my mother's, by the way. She was broken up about that. But I heard my dad say something of that Wendell Willkie had propounded in some rather vague economic proposal. But it sounded very important, so I tried to memorize that evening what my father was recounting to me. The next day in class, I then stood up and propounded the Wendell Willkie economic theory. My teacher, A.S. Cohn, looked at me and said, "I have no idea what you are talking about, but I'm giving you a check mark anyway." So that was the school. It was just wonderful to be here, walking sometimes, not taking the bus, but walking up Bedford Avenue from Sheepshead Bay, Avenue Y. And I felt very much at home here. And I graduated about a month, because I graduated in the winter, either January, February of '42, right after Pearl Harbor, which of course meant that I knew I was going to go to war. Eventually I was going to be in the draft. So that was the context of being at Madison. It was a unique 4-year period, starting with the agreement of England and France with Mussolini and Hitler to give up the Sudetenland for Czechoslovakia, and that would be Neville Chamberlain yelling "peace in our time," and then ending just before I graduated with Pearl Harbor. It was a very interesting context to be going to Madison High School, or any high school in those days, because it was surfeit with so much reality coming into our world. With it all, I did enjoy going to football games. I did enjoy singing, but most important of all in reflection is the fact that this is a public education institution. And in today's world, in this country, that's sort of under attack. And I want to use my time up here to make a point, which is that this school is really, as it says on the lintel when you walk into the school, education is the true foundation of civil liberty. In this country, it was evidenced in the 18th century with the creation of land-grant colleges, and in the 19th century, after the war, it was the GI Bill of Rights that allowed us to go to any college we wanted to at no cost. I ended up completing my education at NYU on the GI Bill of Rights. And the idea that there is an alternative to public education, I think, is a very dangerous one. Not saying that a charter school, charter school, is a bad idea in certain times and locations, but to make it the sine qua non, to turn it over to the people running those privately, I think is probably, in my mind, a dangerous idea. So I want to use today I want to use today to take a few words which are said to me often when people find out I was in the war and turn to me and say, "Thank you for your service." And I am always embarrassed by that because I have to remind the younger people that it wasn't thank you for your service in those days. We were all drafted. Nobody asked us to volunteer. You know, we bloody well went in. And not only did we go in individually, we all went in. 15 million men went in. And the whole society was at war. We had rationing, we had brownouts, we had guards watching the lights, and so on. So it was a different war. But I like those words if we were to say them to teachers. When you see a teacher say, thank you for your service. I leave you with that thought, and thank you so very much for this unique honor.